Seeing such a taste, he is fixed in consciousness.
Take 60. Yatato yapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti pasabhammana. The senses are so strong,
impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them.
61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasyendriyanani tasya pragya pratishtita. One who restrains his senses
and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence.
62. Jayato vishayan pumsa samraseshnu bhajayate samrat sanjayate kama kamat krodho vijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses,
a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises.
63. Krodhat bhavati sammohat sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti bhramshat purinasho purinashat pranashriti. From anger, delusion arises,
and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
64. Ragadvesha vimuktastu vishayanindriyascharan atmavashya vidheyatma
prasadam adhigacchati.
One who can control his senses,
practicing the regulated principle of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and thus become free from all attachment and aversion.
65. Prasade sarvadukhanam anirasyo pajayate prasayana
chetaso yashu
buddhi paryavatishtate. For one who is so situated
in the divine consciousness, the threefold miseries of material exist no longer. In such a happy state, one's intelligence soon becomes steady.
66. Nasti buddhi ayuktasya nachayuktasya bhavana nachabhavata shantir ashantasya kutasukam. One who is not in transcendental
consciousness can have neither a controlled mind nor steady conscious intelligence with such possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace?
(67) As a Indriyanam hicharatam mano vidhiyate tarasya harati pragyam ayurnavamivambasi. As a boat on the water
is swept away by a strong wind, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence.
68. Tasmad yasya mahabhaho nigrihitani sarvashaha indriyatebhyas tasya pragya pratishtha. Therefore, O mighty Arjuna,
one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence.
69, the last verse tonight. Yanisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami yasyam jagarti bhutani sanisha pashato mune. What is night
Night
for all beings?
is a time of awakening for the self-controlled, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. So we're back to text 59. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and so on is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good if one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. Would you like to comment? So we're in these bodies, and we may restrict ourselves from some type of sense enjoyment that ultimately leads to misery. But the taste for it still remains. The thought of wanting to enjoy something still remains. The meditation on it still remains. Sometimes even after practicing Krishna consciousness for many, many years, the taste for it might remain. But if we cease engaging in that action by experiencing a higher taste, and in this case, Shravanam and Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Kirtan, cooking, so many higher engagements we have in Krishna consciousness that can help us lose the taste for those sense objects that cause us to gratify our senses and bring us further away from our goal. Of course, bhakti is not dependent on anything. It's not dependent on that everything's perfect in our lives. Krishna is so merciful that he will grant us entrance into Goloka Vrindavan. Even if some of those things still remain, by his mercy, that's the only way, really. Because bhakti is not dependent on us perfecting our senses, although we strive for that goal very much. With loving devotional service in mind and not restricting ourselves unnaturally, which could lead to becoming hard-hearted, could lead to us judging other devotees if they have some issue with ceasing the lower sense enjoyment, looking down on them and not treating them with care and respect like all devotees deserve. And that's kind of the mood we want, like we heard earlier this morning, being humble.
Make it louder.
Having a humble mentality, wearing that verse around the neck, Trinanapi Sunuchena, can keep us in the mood to associate with devotees and really get the higher taste. We can lose the lower taste of associating with non-devotees and really engage in tasting the nectar of associating with devotees. So there's all sorts of processes out there for restricting the senses, but none of them are as sublime and really easy and recommended in this age of Kali Yuga as chanting the Maha Mantra daily and really getting a taste for that. So we're very fortunate in Kali Yuga to be able to chant this Hare Krishna mantra and really bring our tastes to a higher level. X60. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Purport. There are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the sages, but in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishvamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menaka into sex enjoyment. Although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice, and of course, there are so many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is very difficult to control the mind and the senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot cease such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee who says, "Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been experiencing an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at the thought." Krishna consciousness is such a transcendentally nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarish also conquered a great yogi, Durvas Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Can everyone in here name at least one thing that they've given up so easily since joining the movement of Krishna consciousness? Just maybe shout out, maybe like intoxication or something like that. Or you could be more specific. It's up to you. I'm just curious. It was so easy. You just started chanting and you didn't do that anymore. Intoxication? Yeah. Yeah. So we got that higher taste of Krishna consciousness. Is there things that we still haven't given up, but we know we want to? Like maybe more subtle things, or even more like things that we struggle with still on the four regs, lust, yeah, anger, that's me, greed, all those things. So we can think Krishna took away that need for us to intoxicate ourselves because we were given a higher taste. Of course, we hear that that taste might remain even after not practicing it. But there's hope. My point is that there's hope that he took that away so easily. But if we keep chanting and if we keep associating with devotees, he's going to take those other things away too. There's hope that he will do that. And this verse by Sri Yamunacharya is quite nice. It explains that if we focus on the lotus feet of the Lord, we no longer have to be focused on sex enjoyment or sex life with a woman. We can become disgusted by that because we know that we have a higher taste. In fact, we've realized we have a higher taste. And if it comes in our mind, which it probably will, because we're we're conditioned souls, but then we can immediately recognize that as a thought that's not worthwhile because we know it's not actual enjoyment. So that connection between the thought and the spitting motion can become rather close. Sometimes it's far away. Sometimes a thought happens and then takes us a while for it to spit at it. But hopefully over time, those two will come closer together where we think about it and we spit at it immediately. Because these thoughts, I've thought about this, these thoughts that we have, they're reoccurring thoughts, memories. I'm like, man, is this ever going to stop? And I hope it does for myself and for everyone here. But then I'm like, maybe it's just a matter of, knowing what to do with that thought when it comes in. Of course, yeah. So, and in the neophyte stage, maybe dealing with that way is good. And then hopefully someday the mind won't even go there because it'll be so focused on thinking of Krishna. As we've chanted and we've heard so much that immediately goes to remembrance of Krishna. And we just have some favorite image, some favorite artistic image of Krishna. I don't know if any of you guys seen, there's Krishna as a young boy playing with a flute, and he's almost like licking his finger. It's by Pushkar Prabhu, pretty sure. And it's one that comes in my mind. And I was hearing a devotee talking about offering like articles from the arti to while you're meditating on Krishna, offering the articles of the arti to this image that you have, and it's a nice meditation. Like this is my most worshipful Lord, and it's a way for us to remember Krishna and have Krishna in mind and not on some other subject matter. So Prabhupada mentions those who practice these other yoga processes like Ashtanga yoga. And then the next in 59, and then in the next text in 60, he's mentioning the learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists might try to conquer their senses, but they ultimately fail to material sense enjoyment. They ultimately fall down. So we have to be careful of that, but Krishna is saying that if we just engage in this Krishna consciousness, then we can become detached like that. Like it says in the Bhagavatam, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojataha Janat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Yad Ramadarshanam. We're engaged in Krishna consciousness and in the loving devotional service to Krishna, then automatically we can make advancement in detachment and knowledge, vairagya, and jnana. And in that way we can see, forget the last part, Brahmadarshanam. I'm forgetting, but this process of Krishna consciousness, it leads to that automatic detachment from sensual things. And in this case, the strongest one is sex life. It's the strongest one. It's why we're here. We wanted to enjoy separately. It's the highest pleasure. And yet it's so short. But we can learn to control our minds by seeking that higher taste. So we'll go to text 61. One who restrains his senses and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Report. That the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses as cited above. The great sage Durvasa Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarish and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. King Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a Matparaha devotee of the Lord. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki jai. The word Matparaha is most significant in this connection. How one can become a Matparaha is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarish. Srila Baladev Vidyabhushana, a great scholar and acharya in the line of the Matparaha, remarks, Madbhakti Prabhavena Sarvindriya Vijaya Purvika Swatma Drishti Sulabhiti Bhavaha. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As the small flames within burn everything within the room, similarly, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also describes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something which is not the Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the aim of real yoga. So Prabhupada is really trying to enlighten us about how to control our senses, how to get that higher taste. And he gives the example of the story, the pastime of Durvasa Muni and Maharaj Ambarish. And we find that Durvasa Muni made some offense and Maharaj Ambarish was able to not become angry. And Prabhupada so nicely cited the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 9th canto, how to do that. He even gave us a meditation that we can think of. We can fix our minds on the lotus feet of Krishna. You know, if we stare at if we take darshan, I should say, of the lotus feet of Sri Sri Gauranitai, and we really try to remember what those lotus feet look like, we can think of those. We don't even have to be in the temple room. I personally really like to think of the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Vrindavan Chandra. They have a special way of looking. You know, every deity's feet is different, but Krishna so nicely arranged for us to be able to view the beauty of the deities. And with the Srila Prabhupada's mercy also, we can take darshan of so many different deities in all of the temples all over the world. And we can have those thoughts, those images in the mind of those lotus feet of those deities. And it can be our meditation when we're in distress. And we can know that's a real shelter. Our shelter is not our mind. Our shelter is not getting angry about something. It's trying to meditate on the lotus feet of Krishna. And something even closer to home is touching the body of the devotee. You know, the devotees' bodies are very special because they're fully engaged in serving Krishna. They, in fact, become spiritualized by the consumption of prasadam. And if we think about it, every 7 years, we're we're told by science, and we can use this information in the service of Krishna, that every 7 years, all the cells in our bodies are replaced. So if we take prasadam for 7 years straight, and only prasadam, or food offered to the deity, then our bodies become completely spiritualized, right? So it's like we're touching the mercy of the Lord, right? Every time we hug the devotee or give the devotee a back massage, you know, it's so beautiful. And we can think about that. We can think about how, all the devotees are spending so much time and energy and using their bodies for the Lord. And we hear in the nectar of instruction that even if the body is deformed, it's still sacred. It's still sacred to us. And we can meditate even on those deformations. I often think of His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj and how he's seemingly suffering from so many maladies of the body. At Sadhu Sangha, and it was a kirtan retreat that happened in Dallas earlier this year. His Holiness Sachinanda Maharaj they were talking on stage, and His Holiness Sachinanda Maharaj asked Jayapataka how he was doing. And I only heard about this, I wasn't there, but he said, well, I'm suffering from all these things, or I'm having to deal with all these things, not necessarily suffering, because that's a choice. And I'm having to deal with all these things, yet he's still engaged in Krishna consciousness and traveling all over the world. And so many devotees' time and energy go into helping his sacred body, as a devotee is very advanced, make it to all those locations, because he's such a great inspiration to devotees all over the world. So many devotees are involved in so many things, and we can meditate on that. We could meditate on His Holiness Dhanava Goswami so nicely putting together all this Garga Samhita and all the books that he writes. And we can become enlivened by that, and we can forget all of the anxiety and fears we have, and we can become attached to that. So many different ways of meditating on Krishna instead of meditating on things that are produced by the mind or getting caught up in the false ego. Text 62. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. Purport. One who is not Krishna conscious is subject to material desires while contemplating the objects of senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects, and the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal, and as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly eluded by the incarnation of Maya Devi, but Haridas easily passed a test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above-mentioned verse of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fail, for the slightest thought of sense pleasures will agitate him to gratify his senses. So the more we practice Krishna consciousness, the more we can have the disconnection between the thought of enjoying our senses and actually doing it. And that way we can stop it. And Srila Prabhupada saying that the secret of success is to get that higher taste. And we get a methodical understanding of how this happens, how we engage in gratifying the senses. We contemplate the objects of the senses, and then we develop attachment for them. And in that way, we act on them. But a side note, I mean, what this verse is saying is that if we're contemplating on them so much, we get attachment to it. And when that attachment happens, lust happens, and from lust, we become angry. So when someone is angry, especially if they're not engaged in Krishna consciousness, we can have compassion for them and see that at some point they were contemplating so much on these sense objects, say cigarettes or something, you know, they're saying, I want to smoke a cigarette. I'm thinking about smoking a cigarette. And if they don't get to smoke a cigarette, they become agitated. And there's so many different levels of that, especially smoking cigarettes, is because the nicotine in the cigarette makes you even more attached, and there's a chemical dependency there. So that's even heavier. But of course, that can be broken as one gets a higher taste in Krishna consciousness. It's, you know, it's not a helpless situation. And, you know, as devotees, we're always praying for the upliftment of other devotees. We're always trying to wish them well in their process of Krishna consciousness. And if we're always thinking of wishing them well, then there's no room for envy. Because if we're not wishing someone well, then we know, okay, my heart's still a little dirty. I need to chant Hare Krishna more and really try to get this higher taste. Yeah. I didn't bring the clock up here. I don't know what time it is. 8:12. Thanks, Prabhu. Okay, I'll read the next verse and then we can end there. So we learn that while contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. When we have that anger, delusion arises. So we're deluded. We don't quite understand what's happening. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory, we lose our memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. We can have some pretty heavy introspections about this verse and how we've fallen back into the material pool as devotees. You know, it happens, even the simplest things, you know, it can happen so quick. One thing that I notice about myself is like getting on my phone, you know, I could so easily get bewildered, like, oh, I know that's not helpful for me, but somehow I'm like, you know, looking at something that's not, you know, exactly related to devotional service. You know, of course we can be compassionate on ourselves and say, oh man, maybe it's not so terrible that I'm watching like someone taking a video of a tsunami. I mean, it's the Krishna's energy. But maybe it's not the most helpful thing. You know, maybe instead of doing that, we could use our time to memorize some shloka that we've been wanting, you know, and really keep that in our heart. And we can pull those shlokas out at any time and use them as a way to keep ourselves fixed in Krishna consciousness, especially these two shlokas here. They can really help us to remain fixed, and we can preach to ourselves in the mind and know that just by engaging in this activity that's sense gratification, it actually affects our Krishna consciousness practice and our minds and our relationships with other devotees. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll take some questions now. Jagannath Prabhu, and then Magadari.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I had a comment and then I had a few questions,
Please.
but I'll just pick one. So this is the comment. I liked what you were saying. I wrote it down. What you said about when someone becomes angry, we should have compassion towards them. And I think what you were trying to say is like, because they concentrate on the objects of the senses more than others. So I thought that this was a really nice point, because as people practicing Krishna consciousness, we know where their mentality is at. So if we see that they're becoming disturbed by concentrating on the objects of the senses, it's easy for us to see that and just, give them the benefit of the doubt, tolerate these things. So I really liked what you were saying on that point. Okay. And then one question was, you're speaking about, I can't remember, but you were saying that I think you said devotional service pleases Krishna or something like that. Did you say so? Anyway, so I was just wondering, what is it exactly that Krishna finds so pleasing about devotional service? What is his mindset,
Brahmasi's, it's one of the opulences of Bhagavan. He's Bhagavan and he's completely renounced. But he's pleased by those actions. He tells us in the Bhagavad Gita what pleases him, offering him a leaf, a flower, fruit or water. That pleases him. I'm kind of drawing a blank. I know Krishna, so we have the spiritual master telling us how Krishna is pleased. If we offer him certain foodstuffs, if we worship him, if we offer obeisances to him, manmana bhava madbhakto majiji mam namaskaru mame vaisha si yuktaivam atmana matparayanaha. We offer him obeisances, worship him. 934. I'm just going to go to that verse. I don't want to say it incorrectly. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, offer obeisance is and worship me, being completely absorbed in me. Surely you will come to me. So he wants us to come to him. He wants us to be with him. And he's giving us the knowledge to recognize our position in the world, in the material world, so we can come to him, so we can become purified. And he sends us the spiritual master so we can do that too. I'm sure there's some other nice comments that maybe another devotee would like to comment on that question. Problem? Turn off problem? I don't think I gave him a good enough answer, but
Hare Krishna. One time I asked Maharaj about something in relation to this, and it was like, I asked him, does he pay attention when somebody gives his youth to serving Srila Prabhupada's movement? And Maharaj said, yeah, this is very, very pleasing to Krishna, giving somebody's youth. So if we just think about it on a time scale, and if we try to demonstrate to Krishna how much time do I want to spend with you, and how much time do I want to spend away from you, we're just slowly breaking it down like that, we can see. Because going back to Godhead and being with Krishna, that's it. Prove yourself that you want to actually spend that time with him.
Yeah. Krishna also says in chapter 18 that those who share this knowledge are very dear to him. So he doesn't leave us in the dark about what we can do to become close to him. Is it okay if our guest has questions? Is that okay, Prabhu? Yeah. Yeah. We'll get you the mic. Yeah. Oh.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was looking at the mantra and I want to know what Hare Krishna, well, Hare and Hare Krishna, well, Rama, and yeah, I guess that's it. What those words mean.
Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada, he defined the mantra as a prayer saying, "Oh Lord, oh energy of the Lord," because the Lord is a person. There's also energy of the Lord. He's variegated in some way, although he maintains a person. But oh Lord, oh energy of the Lord, please engage me on your service. So we're praying like, Lord, please engage me on your service, because the more we serve Krishna here, like Maturnath Prabhu was saying, the more time we devote to serving Krishna here, because in the spiritual world, we're always serving Krishna, like the form we are, because we're spirit souls. We're not our bodies, we're spirit souls. Body's constantly changing. Something inside of us stays the same. And in the Gita, it's explained that we're the spirit soul. So as spirit soul, we're transferred to the spiritual world, then in that situation, there's no thought of serving our senses. There's only thought of serving the senses of Krishna. So in this sense, we're praying to Krishna right now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we're praying, please engage me in your service always, because I want entrance into that spiritual world. And I have to practice here in order to gain entrance into the spiritual world. The process is quite simple. We serve Krishna. We cook Krishna what he likes to take. We chant this Maha Mantra every day. So it's quite simple and it's joyful. And in that way, we can build our relationship with Krishna and actually get to know him personally, and then get out of this material world, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita as a place of material. It's a place of suffering. Everybody's always suffering. They might distract themselves with something, but ultimately it's suffering, because a lot of people think they're the body. When my body ends, that's it, right? It's common belief. But in the Gita, we learn that it's not. We don't just have one life. We've had millions of past lives, and if we're not careful, we could have millions of future lives. Of course, we're not fearful because Krishna is taking care of them, and everyone's following the path back to Krishna, actually, in their own way. But as we get to know Krishna more, we get the desire to want to serve him more instead of serving our senses. And so that's what really got into these purports, was really nailing down the fact that if we try to serve Krishna more and more, then these things that disturb us, this sense gratification or gratifying our own senses, will eventually be gone. That's the power of the process. Did that help? Yeah.
Thanks you.
Thanks for coming to class. We could go 2 more minutes if Magadari wants to say his comment or question. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Those were some nice answers that you gave. I wanted to just mention that each one of these words is addressing a different person. So Krishna and Rama are addressing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like you were saying, right? That's Krishna. And in the temple, we worship Krishna in his form as a devotee. So his name is Lord Chaitanya. So where Krishna means all attractive, so God is all attractive. Rama means the reservoir of all pleasure. So those are adjectives, which are also his personal names. And Hare is a name for Mother Hara. And you'll see, like here in this picture, we have Krishna and Radha, or Radha and Krishna, how we usually say it. We say, Hare Krishna, right? So we call out to Mother Hara in the invocative form by saying Hare. So we call out to her. She is the energy of the Lord, as you nicely pointed out, and she can help us connect in devotion to Krishna in service. So we're calling out as helpless children to be engaged in the service of our eternal Father. And we need the mother's help. So we say, Hare Krishna. So thank you.
Thank you. That was really nice. It's the real yin and yang of spiritual life. Radha and Krishna. Thanks everyone for coming to class. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Gita. Vanchakalpa Trivyascha Kripa Sindhuvyeva Cha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.